We will study a study of 10 Sefirot lesson with Rabash. We're going to be reading in volume 2 of the study of 10 Sefirot, part 5. We are in item 46, Inner Light, starting with the words, and this item 4 causes the cessation of the light from Ein Sof. We'll read first from the study of 10 Sefirot, volume 2, part 5. We're going to read item 46 in the words of the Ari. Item 46. Afterwards, it returned to being not mati in keter, and then it is mati in chokhmah and bina and chesed, and then it is not mati or expanding in gvura, and expands in tiferet, and not mati in netzach, mati in hod, and not mati in yesod, as it ascended in hod. At that time it turns its anterior and gives light to malchut below in her place, and then it is mati in malchut. Now the first phases are complete, which is the reality of the expansion. Thus all 10 lights have reached malchut. We'll enter now into the lesson with Rabash.
I'm starting from the top of the page where he says, this dalet means the cessation of the light from the parzuf. Phase 4 means that there's no light on the degree because all the coarseness in the screen was refined and the coupling stopped. There is no reflected light to clothe the direct light there any longer. And the direct light stops as well. If there's no reflected light, also the direct light departs from the degree. And all the Sefirot of the lights that would illuminate in the vessels return to the emanator. So what does he mean that all the Sefirot return to the emanator? The light is departed. So why is he mentioning it again? That all the Sefirot return to the emanator through the incorporation of all the records in them inside the screen. As only the screen rises to the emanator. So what does he say here? All the Sefirot return to the emanator. Who does he mean? On the light, which is already departed. On the records, they remain in the vessels. So we should say that in all the Sefirot, meaning all the records that are in the Sefirot, rise to the emanator by the screen. If so, what's difficult here? Why, when we say that it was refined, when he continues the illumination of Chesed and Gvura, how do we say that when Chesed was illuminating, so it didn't expand in Keter? While it was illuminating in Gvura, it was illuminating in Keter. When it illuminates in Tiferet, so it doesn't illuminate in Keter. When it illuminates in Netzer, it does illuminate in Keter. So what expands? It ascends, and there's a coupling, while it doesn't expand in Malchut. So I don't say that it expands in Keter. Why? As we learn, whether it expands or not, all the time. Why? After phase 4, we learn the same thing, that it ascended upward, and again ascended in Keter, and we learned when it was expanding in Chokhmah on the second stage, so Binah ascends the Chokhmah and receives the Chokhmah, Afterwards, it refined to phase 1. Then it expanded in Chesed. And I say that when Binah refined to phase 2 and 1, so also Zon of Chokhmah then refines and ascended to who? To Keter. And again expanded in Keter, where the Chasadim can illuminate again, and then it doesn't expand in Chesed. Afterwards, it refined again, Keter, and doesn't expand in Keter. Doesn't expand in Keter, so he says, expands in Chokhmah. When it expands in Chokhmah, so again, Binah ascends to Chokhmah. And again expands in Chesed. And again in Gvura, it connects with Agar to the Rosh, which is Chesed. The rest of the Gvura is given in Tiferet, illuminates in Tiferet, Chokhmah. Then we learn again. It doesn't expand in Chokhmah, so it ascends to Keter. When it expands in Keter, it illuminates again in Chasadim, but illuminates in Chokhmah and Binah and Chesed. It expands in Gvura. It doesn't expand in Tiferet, it expands in Netzach. Again, it doesn't expand in Chokhmah and Keter, it expands in Chokhmah. Again, Binah ascends to Chokhmah, Gvura to Chesed, Netzach to Tiferet, and the rest is given to Hod. And again, there's a refinement in Chokhmah, that Chokhmah ascends to Keter, and again expands in Keter. And again, there's no Chokhmah, not in Chokhmah and in Binah, doesn't expand in Chesed, expands in Gvura, doesn't expand in Tiferet, expands in Netzach, doesn't expand in Hod, but expands in Yesod. Here he says again, it doesn't expand in Keter, but it expands in Chokhmah. So Chokhmah ascends to Binah, and Binah to Chokhmah, Chesed to Gvura, Netzach to Tiferet, Yesod ascends to Hod. What light descends in Yesod? The light of Malchut. It also takes the Vav in it that mitigated earlier and remained phase 4 and gave to Malchut. Afterwards, we have to say again, it didn't expand in Chokhmah, it ascends to Keter and again expands in Keter. But while phase 4 was refined, so again, it expands in Keter. What's the reason? That since there is no coarseness, you can't say that it expanded in Keter again. That's hardly reasonable. That's why it turns out that when we say that it expands in Keter, it illuminates phase 4/3. How does its control pass from Keter to Chokhmah? Chokhmah is 3-2, so first it has to refine to phase 3-2. Otherwise, it's face-to-face. How could it give? He says, expands in Keter, doesn't expand in Chokhmah and in Binah and in Chesed, but expands in Gvura. How does it bestow from Keter to Gvura? That's what I'm asking. Phase 4/3 illuminates, and 3-2 cannot. Only phase 1 can. How? There's a cessation of the degree. How does the abundance come? How could it illuminate 4/3? It does. 2 over 1 cannot illuminate. The phase 1 can. So in Parzuf Galgalta, we learn that phase 4 refined and phase 3 illuminates. So then there is no question how from the emanator can phase 1 come, but 432 does not come from the emanator. Can we say that there is no cessation between the degrees? That there's phase 1 in all degrees? One illuminates in all the degrees, and phase 4 over 3 not. There is no such course since it was already defined. Here we say that while Chokhmah and Binah, that are 3-2 ascended to Keter, rose to Keter, and again from expanded in Keter phase 4-3. Then we say that phase 1 illuminates in the vessel of Zer Anpin. He says there, whether you remember, when I say that it expands in Chesed, how? That phase 2 must refine, correct? Phase 2 refined and became phase 1. And right away, phase 3 over 2 ascend to Keter and expand in Keter again. So what about phase 1? Does phase 1 refine or not? He doesn't say.
But what he does say is, first of all, we must say that phase 1 can be refined prior to it going through all its 6 phases. First of all, that's only a part. Secondly, we say that 1 still illuminates, only because Keter gives control so that Chokhmah does not illuminate, then the light of Chasadim illuminates. And then when we learn that it expands in Chokhmah, the question is asked, is it then that the same order is made? Meaning that 3-2, that the vessel of Chokhmah refines, and when 2 is refined from Binah and gives once more to phase 1, he doesn't speak of this. And according to the order, you could say the same thing here. But we're not talking about this. He's only talking whether it's on, if it's lit. When I say expanding in Keter, then it's not expanding in Chokhmah. There's no 3-2. And there is 1, since it still remains. He doesn't say now I, where from 4-3, they emerge phase 1. That's possible in the degree that phase 1 will emerge. Only what he says, that from what remains, it illuminates now. It turns out, accordingly, an allegory. Let's go back up. When we studied the first time that Chokhmah was refined from 2 to 1, what did she give to Binah? 1. In what state was it in then? Not expanding in Chokhmah. What's the meaning of not expanding in Chokhmah? Chokhmah was refined both from her 3 now and also from her 2. 3 was before, and 2 to 1 is refined now. And it expands to Binah. And when I say expanding in Binah, meaning inversion of the anterior, meaning in Chasadim, then we learn that 3-2, that was in the Kli of Chokhmah, ascends to Keter and becomes expanding in Keter. If so, what state are we talking about? From the state of expanding in Keter and not expanding in Chokhmah and expanding in Binah. He also gives a question. What? 4, 3, yes. And 3, 2, no. There's no 3, 2. No, there's still 2. Bina has yet to be refined. But in 2, of courseness, there isn't. 2 of courseness has been refined and gave 1 to who? To those that are in the vessel of Bina. Only what we learn then, in Bina is her light. Which light? Still phase 2. We also ask the question, Chokhmah doesn't have 2 or 1. No, it doesn't have 2 or 3. How is it possible that Bina will have 2 when Chokhmah doesn't have 2? Either I'm speaking from what received 2 before, or that I'm speaking of the 2 of clothing that still remains in her and was refined only the phase 2 of coarseness that was in the vessel of Chokhmah. Here too there's a question, what does he mean? Well, he gets into details here, but he doesn't enter the details here. It's all abstract, meaning it's like saying the vessels remain as before. Phase 1, he says that prior expanded, and it's not expanding, and that's only above. And they bring forth to 1 to receive each time change, either Chokhmah or Chasadim. This takes place until it refines all the coarseness. When all the coarseness is refined, what is there? There's no longer who to illuminate to. Again, what's the meaning of expanding in Keter? Ask. I mean here. What is the meaning of expanding in Keter? We learned that after her 3, 2 of the vessel of Chokhmah were refined, they ascend above to receive and to request filling, and in order to give it this filling, just like in the first time, where he of 3, 2 had 4, 3, therefore he says that they now, Keter needs to extend 4, 3. It turns out that who does he extend 4, 3 for? For the lower ones. So as long as there is on behalf of the coarseness below, it can be said that it expands in Keter. But it was already refined from all the coarseness, and there's no one to give to already. But that is also a little difficult. After someone can make a screen, when does it ascend above? When it no longer can make a screen. That is considered that it doesn't have coarseness. Here comes the question. Why do we say that it would expand in phase 1 of coarseness? We say each time that Chokhmah, Bina rise to Keter, not to Rosh, to Keter, the Keter receives the screen once more for the lower one. To say that also Malchut was refined, that Malchut ascended, also it is the same raising of Man to Keter, not to the head of the degree, to the Rosh of the degree. On here we say it's done. Keter no longer receives anything now. However, until the screen will rise from all the records to the Rosh of Ab, then Keter can receive from Sag. But what? It's already done. It's already finished. So that is the question. So he explains here that as long as there's some coarseness from Ab, it ascends upwards, Keter becomes coarser, and Keter extends it for Ab. But while there is no coarseness of Ab upon phase 3, even coarseness of the root 3, they can also extend, and then Keter is no longer. But again, even the Keter remains below. And when does the Keter receive light? From the light of Sag. When we say expanding in Keter and not expanding in Chokhmah and not expanding in Bina and expanding in Zeranpin. Hence, that expands, we learned, we expands in Keter, meaning that it's expanding in Gevurah. What light illuminates in Gevurah? The light of Chesed. Here, it has to do to its measure, how much it can receive from phase 1. It cannot receive any more than that. Only what it receives in its phase. The light of Chokhmah, Chasadim, is a completely different thing. It does not depend on coarseness. It depends on the control of the light of Keter. And in the siyum of the degree, will it ever change? Only what? We could say that we don't have to engage with the degrees. Meaning that the light of Keter illuminates to 2 and 3 its degree, and not everyone from its degree, as much as it can receive. The light of Chokhmah or Chasadim. And they say that it expands in Chokhmah, and then Bina ascends to Chokhmah. And the Bina was refined to phase 2, from phase 2 to Aleph, to 1, and gives Chesed, expanding in Chesed, one stage. Example. And later we learn that when 2 was refined upon 1 of Bina, then Zon of Bina and Zon of Chokhmah ascended to Keter, and once more expanded in Keter. When it becomes expanding in Keter, then no longer can the light of Chokhmah illuminate in the degree. It turns out that not expanding in Chokhmah and Bina and not in Chesed. So Chesed, its anterior was Chokhmah. It inverts its anterior and gives the Chasadim that she received as if to Gevurah. From this, we get that through Chesed, it moves and gives the anterior to Gevurah. And when we say expanding in Chokhmah, not expanding in Chokhmah, then again, Bina rises to Chokhmah. 2. He doesn't talk about being refined. Here, there it is phase 1. He speaks of this. Well, we also should say that there's a certain form of refinement here. He doesn't say. Only then it illuminates again and expands in Chesed. Then the Gevurah, where there is Gar in its Rosh, the Gevurah ascends to Chesed, and what remains of her, what remains in her, which does not rise above, which is below her degree, she gives the lower by inverting her anterior. What is Gevurah? Chasadim, which inverts her anterior and gives Chokhmah to Tiferet.
Let's go